Okay, hello, hello. I'm Mariette DiChristina, and I'm the Dean of Boston University's College of Communication. I'm also an alum of COM and a parent of a recent BU grad. And I'd love to welcome you to today's special event, Sports Broadcasting 2020, News, Views, and Insights. Our expert panel is going to have a very wide-ranging conversation looking at sports production past, present, and future. Just a thing, I think, to pep up those dog days of August. This event is being recorded, and later in the event, you'll get a chance to ask questions using the Q&A feature down at the bottom of your screen. Now I'd like to share a welcome to each of our speakers. I'm going to start off with Bob Fishman. This is Bob's 44th year with CBS Sports. He served as lead director of CBS Sports college basketball coverage, including the NCAA Division I Men's Basketball Championship and Final Four since 1982. Bob also continues to serve as director for the network's coverage of the NFL, which he's done for more than 33 years. He's worked on an amazing range of sports in his career. For instance, he was lead director for CBS Sports' coverage of the US Open Tennis Championships for 27 years until 2014. And he directed figure skating at several Olympics Winter Games, including one of the openings of the games in Japan. His racing credits include 20 years at the Daytona 500, as well as NASCAR and the Formula One Detroit Grand Prix. He's directed the World Series, NBA playoffs, Belmont Stakes, college football, and lots more. He's earned 16 Emmy Awards, 2 Eclipse Awards, and 3 Directors Guild of America Awards. Last and not least, he graduated from COM in 1969. Welcome to you, Bob.
Well, I got to unmute. Thanks very much. Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Super, thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Andrea Kramer, who's chief correspondent for the NFL Network. Kramer became the first full-time female NFL game analyst, partnering with Hannah Storm to form the first female commenting team for Amazon Prime Video's Thursday Night Football package. In 2014, she helped launch We Need to Talk, the first ever all-female nationally televised weekly sports show on CBS Sports Network. Andrea is also correspondent for HBO's Real Sports with Brian Gumbel. Past roles include reporting for NBC Sports, becoming ESPN's very first female correspondent, and a number of roles for NFL films. And at COM, I'm very proud to say, as the dean there, that she teaches a course she designed called The Art of the Interview in the journalism department. She's won a lot of honors. I'm just going to give you a little sampling. In 2018, she won the Pro Football Hall of Fame. They awarded her the Pete Rozelle Radio Television Award for exceptional contributions to radio and television and professional football. She's received 2 Emmys, multiple Gracies, and a Peabody. In 2020, Andrea received the Mary Garber Pioneer Award, the highest honor bestowed by the Association for Women in Sports Media. Welcome, Andrea, and thanks for joining.
Hello, Mariette. Great to see you and everybody on the panel, and hope everybody's healthy and safe.
Awesome. Now let's say hello to Jenny Taft, a former collegiate athlete possessing a broad knowledge of several sports. Jenny contributes to a variety of roles for Fox Sports, including as a lead reporter for the network's college football, moderator on FS1's Skip and Shannon Undisputed, host of the Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show, and reporter for several other major events, including the FIFA Women's World Cup France's 2019 and 2018 FIFA World Cup Russia. I'm having trouble tripping on some of the words. Sorry about that, Jenny. During the college football season, she joins the lead team of play-by-play announcer Gus Johnson and analyst Joel Klatt as reporter. She began her full-time position as moderator on FS1 Daily Show, Skip and Shannon Undisputed, in July 2018, shortly after returning from Russia, where she served as reporter for Fox Sports coverage of the 2018 FIFA World Cup. Jenny commenced her broadcasting career in her native Minneapolis, accepting her first position with Fox as part of the Twin Cities-based regional network Fox Sports North. And at BU, she graduated from CGS in 2008 and COM in 2010. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you. And I'm so happy to be with Bob, Andrea, and Noah. Truly, it's really special to be among you guys. So thanks for having me.
Thanks a million, Jenny. And last and not least, I'd like to introduce you to our moderator, Noah Kosloff, who's going to take you after, from here after this. Noah's broadcasting career has taken him to major sporting events across the country, reporting from the Final Four, NBA Finals, Stanley Cup, Super Bowl, and the World Series. He's hosted national radio programs and continues to serve as a college basketball and football play-by-play announcer for Stadium, while also serving as a studio host for CBS Sports HQ. Away from the camera, Noah works with current and former athletes to develop their media talent, and he graduated from COM in 2004. Thanks so much, Noah. Welcome, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Dean, and thanks everybody for joining us live here. And you'll also be able to watch this on demand if you want to pass it on to friends, bu.edu/streambu. And don't use the chat feature, use the Q&A feature, and then we'll be able to get to all these questions later on in the hour. So working in sports, we're always, the first reaction always is, oh, wow, that's got to be the coolest thing ever. Do you know? And then fill in the blank of this star. So I thought we'd start this off with stories, because oftentimes we're asked just to tell stories at dinner parties. Remember those? So we'll be able to tell these stories at dinner parties, I guess, at some point in the next year and a half. So I'll start, then we'll go to Jenny, Bob, and Andrea with just a quick story. 2003, the summer going into my senior year at BU, I was an intern for the NBA. And the first week was spent at the NBA Finals. It was an ugly finals, Nets Spurs, but it was right in the backyard of the NBA in New Jersey. And then the following week was the NBA draft, the famous NBA draft, 2003 with LeBron James, the #1 pick. That was June 26, 2003 at the theater upstairs at Madison Square Garden. So as an intern, I didn't really have many responsibilities there, mostly just stay out of LeBron's way. And as I'm standing off to the side, right near where the green room area was, where the tables were set up for the players and their friends and families, another group of folks came in that didn't have credentials on, but there was a Neil Young concert at Madison Square Garden that night. So I guess some folks who had enough clout were able to make their way upstairs to the theater. So a man and this woman walk by, and they stand in front of me, and they're right behind the green room. And I hear the man say to the woman, "That's LeBron James." And the man pointed to Maverick Carter, who is LeBron's close friend and now business partner. But Maverick was also wearing an all-white suit, just like LeBron was that night, but nobody ever mistakes the two for each other. So I felt empowered. I've got an NBA credential on, so I tapped the gentleman on the shoulder, and he turns around and I said, "Excuse me, Mr. Trump, that's Maverick Carter. LeBron is over there." I couldn't let Donald Trump or anybody not know who LeBron James was, not knowing that I'd be letting a future president know who LeBron James was. So that's a dinner party story.
There's so many things I want to say right now. I'm just gonna. I think that. Like,
Yeah, me too.
Bob, let's hear Bob's story. Please.
That's a great story.
Jenny, what do you have?
Hard to top. All of these stories are going to be hard to top. I was thinking about this, just about, stories that we have and working in sports, but my story goes back to BU because I think it's it paints a picture of who I am as a person a little bit more. And I did play lacrosse at BU, and I walked on, and, I thought about playing ice hockey or lacrosse and trying to walk on, but I really wanted to go to a college that had a communication school. So BU was really a perfect fit. So I picked kind of the school before the sport, and I went to lacrosse tryouts. I was feeling really good. In Minnesota, I had played lacrosse my whole life, or, give or take, I'd learned kind of late, but it was new in Minnesota. And my skill set in using both hands was not as good as my dominant left hand. So tryouts were good. I felt good, but I actually got cut. And I got an email from the head coach of the BU lacrosse team saying she just didn't think I was there yet. And, I took an afternoon to think on it, and I was bummed. I was surprised. I knew I was good enough. And I emailed her back, which the other thing that's crazy about this, I have no idea why I had kind of the confidence to do it, but I emailed Liz back and I said, "Can I please come by your office?" She said, "Sure, that's fine." So I went in that afternoon, And I said, Liz, if you give me a month to prove to you that I'm good enough, that I'm just as good as everyone on this team, I'd really appreciate it. And I would work really hard to kind of get better. And it's funny to think back, because now I remember going back into her office about a month later and kind of looking around the corner like, hey, am I good? She's like, yeah, Jenny, you're on the team. Like, obviously, I think you know that you made the team at this point. And I played 4 years and earned a scholarship along the way, and best 4 years of my life. I mean, I really, truly, for one day, I think I went to the sailing team and I was like, this isn't going to be it. You know, maybe I'd tried ice hockey, but lacrosse was such a good fit. And, you know, I think it kind of goes into this world of broadcasting where you have to believe in yourself first. And it's at the stage. I mean, maybe I wouldn't have met my husband along the way at BU. I mean, you never know what would have happened had I not played. So I'm so grateful I, you know, followed through and played lacrosse.
It's funny you say that. I thought about trying to walk on the tennis team while I was there, and then ended up devoting myself to WTBU and doing all the radio.
Yeah.
Bob, what about you?
I've got two. I could tell you about the night that our truck blew up in Santa Clara at primetime football game with Francis Ford Coppola sitting behind me. That's another story, and maybe we have time later, I'll tell you that. But my favorite story is I grew up in the Virgin Islands, and from the time I was like 8 years old, I would listen to Dodger games rebroadcast from Delano, California on Armed Forces Radio. And I was enamored with Vin Scully. I wanted to be a baseball announcer. And so anyways, it's crazy, but a number of years later, he ends up working football at CBS for 2 years, and I'm the director on his crew. So during the Dodger Montreal Expo 1981 playoff game to get into the, to win the pennant, Vin and I fly from Atlanta. He connects in New York at LaGuardia and says to me, Bob, I've got to catch a plane to Montreal. Can you pick up my Dodger bag and take it home with you? And if we win, deliver it to my hotel. And if we lose, can you have CBS ship it back to California? And I said, of course I can do that. So I get into a cab with his bag. I get to our apartment. My wife meets me in the lobby and she says, what's that? And I said, well, that's Vin Scully's bag. She says, get out of here. No, that's really Vin Scully's bag. I said, yeah, and I've got to take it hopefully to his hotel if the Dodgers win. She says, why don't you open it and sleep in his pajamas? Thinking that what a great story for our kids one day. So I declined, and I told the story a number of times, and PS on it is the following year at the Sun Bowl, Pat Hayden, who I work with, presents me with an autographed pair of pajamas from Vin Scully, which still hangs in my office, and it says, sweet dreams, Vin. So that's my prized possession, and just think about my idol from the time I was 8 years old to working with him as his director, and then almost sleeping in his pajamas.
I love that. Award-winning story from an award-winning director. Andrea, you're a Hall of Famer, so I know you've got to have a Hall of Fame story.
Well, I like to call it my Oprah moment. My baby was born at the Super Bowl. You can't make this up. I am every woman's cautionary tale. You do not want to have your child 3,000 miles away from home the way that I did. But my son, I always think, could not believe that the Rams were about to win the Super Bowl, had to see it for himself. So what would be more improbable, an ice storm in Atlanta before the Super Bowl, or me giving birth? And it was me giving birth 4 days before the game. So my water actually broke. Can't make this up. I was out to dinner with my boss and his wife. My water broke at a restaurant called Canoe. No joking. I called my husband and I said, I heard women become incontinent at the end of their pregnancy, but this is gross. I'm peeing all over myself. And he goes, your water broke. And I go, don't be ridiculous. He's in Los Angeles. Said he always wanted to go to the airport and say, get me on the next plane, whatever it costs. They say to him, well, you know, there's a flight at 10:30 and every seat is full. We'll put you in a middle seat in the back. Or there's a flight a half an hour later. You'll have the whole plane to yourself. And he goes, no, get me on the earlier plane. And he arrived before they shut down Hartsfield due to an ice storm. So he was there in plenty of time. My son was born on a Wednesday. And I actually I was technically discharged from the hospital on Friday, although we did stay in the hospital, obviously, with my baby. I was on the air 4 days later on Super Bowl Sunday. The deal that I made, I was working for ABC and ESPN at the time. The deal that I made is that I was just going to go in. I was going to do my studio stuff and then come back. And if anybody remembers that game, the Rams Titans, at the end of the game, Kevin Dyson catches the ball and he is about to score, and Mike Jones makes the tackle of his career as they're wheeling in my baby for me to nurse him. And I look at the nurse and I go, don't even think about it. And my husband goes, oh, it's okay. She's not a bad mother. Just give her a minute. Rams win the Super Bowl, nurse the kid, all is good. And my son came home on a plane at 11 days of age. He is now a junior. He is a rising junior in college. And in the transportation field, we always like to say it's because he got an early start with transportation. But that is my story. I always feel it tops everyone, because who would ever think that you would have your baby at the Super Bowl? There you go.
Yeah, there are some greatest show on turf jokes there, but I think I'll leave those alone. So let's come up to the present, where we are now. Andrea, we'll start with you here. Knowing what you know right now, what does the next month look like for you?
Well, if you tell me what the next month is going to look like for the National Football League, then I could probably answer your question even better. Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty for everyone. In terms of football, obviously, we're waiting to see what happens with that. In terms of the studio shows that I do, HBO has built a studio in my office, so I'm able to do Real Sports from here. I'm doing our CBS show, We Need to Talk, in about 3 weeks. And you have to just make do in this environment. It's just that simple. So I really don't know what things are going to look like in the fall. We have to wait and see what happens with football, and if we'll be back out calling games. But certainly it's a new world, and I have said over and over again, the people who are waiting for things to get back to normal are going to be waiting a long time. And the people who adapt, and my word of the year is nimble. Those of us who are nimble, then I think that we will thrive as best as possible in these very uncertain times.
And Bob, how about you being out in the field with the NFL coming up, college football, and then a little bit further down the line with college hoops?
Well, like Andrea said, it's also uncertain now. Every day there's something new that happens. For example, today UConn canceled their entire football season. I happen to notice that. Over the past few days, a number of star NFL players have opted out. We all know what's going on with baseball. Who knows if they're going to even be able to finish the schedule. You know, the NFL has got a lot of things in place that we are privy to, very few of them. In terms of us going back to work, a lot of us are certainly nervous about it, traveling, whatever. There's a number of scenarios, and I can't even discuss what they are because they're just so up in the air, and I don't want to speculate on anything. CBS has done a really good job doing golf. The way they've done it, very safely. Not a single person, from my understanding, has tested positive. You know, they have Jim Nance is there, but the other announcers might be doing it on a Zoom or from a studio, maybe in Orlando or in Burbank. So they've done a great job, and they've got the PGA coming up this weekend. As far as football is concerned, college, I have no idea. I don't do it anymore. I did the SEC for years. A lot of schools want to play. We're talking about big money, as of course the NFL is talking about playing. Will the season be delayed? Again, don't know. How many people are going to be allowed in our TV trucks? Don't know. I know we will be separated and there will be fewer people. I'll just tell you this, it is very possible, just the way golf has been doing that we might have some replay editors elsewhere, not on site. We might have a graphics operator from someplace else and not on site. It's conceivable that the producer, director, and technical director will be in the TV truck, and then with audio in a booth. The play-by-play announcers will be on site, but separated. That's all I know, and we're just waiting to hear. It's, you know, every week we have calls, and we get a little bit of information, but there's nothing concrete. So again, it's a guessing game, all up in the air. See.
We're going to get into how broadcasts look and sound now and how they might be looking and sounding in the future. So Jenny, I know that things are so up in the air, the same with Andrea and Bob and myself calling games and you being on the sideline. So if you would then, since you're in studio now at FS1 for Undisputed, what is that process like minute by minute of being in the studio during these times?
Well, it has been unique and different in a lot of ways. It's also been kind of nice to see that we were able to do a daily show from home. I, like Andrea, had a nice home setup downstairs in my guest room. You know, you make do, right? I think the delay was probably the biggest issue that you experience, and it was a little bit more noticeable in a debate show where you're arguing and you're waiting for those moments. But we got back in studio about, gosh, it really has been 2 months now. You know, and the biggest change is no one's on the lot. I mean, Fox Studios is an enormous spot, and there's so much from sports, obviously, but just to production, film, and television as well. And it's so limited in terms of who's there. But every day I go in, my temperature is taken. I'm asked medical questions on the daily, how I'm feeling, and we're wearing masks everywhere we go in Fox. It's limited in terms of how many people are in the elevator, much like anywhere we're going right now, and sanitation stations at every corner. But, you know, my fear is that we're starting to see we can do a lot with less. And there are a lot of individuals who are not back at work. And that's what really bums me out in terms of the future. And, you know, hair and makeup we're not having right now, which are a lot of jobs. We have less camera operators right now. You know, we only have 1 audio person versus 3, I think, at this point. It's just limited in terms of numbers. And of course, we're able to put on a good show. I'm actually distanced away from the desk, which is unique and different. And frankly, I miss being at the table. I think it's not as good, but you're just going to do what you got to do right now. So it changes daily. You know, I keep hearing that we're going to have more people brought in as the weeks progress. But right now, you know, unfortunately, LA numbers aren't improving. And I'm like Andrea and Bob, I'm optimistic about the college football season. But normally I'd be on a plane every Thursday after the show and traveling to sit down with coaches. And there's no way that is happening in terms of sitting down with people this year. So I'm waiting to see as well. And just grateful right now that the NBA has been able to be so successful. I saw another report today that they've had 0 positive tests, which obviously the bubble's working. Hockey's been successful. And, you know, for Undisputed, it's a breath of fresh air to have that content. And, you know, we need sports for that reason and what we all love. But of course, we want people to be happy and healthy. And, you know, I want the NFL, I want college football more than anything, but I also want this thing to go away. So we'll see.
And just a reminder, in the Q&A box is where you can send questions in, and we'll get to all those questions in the last 15, 20 minutes as we take this for a full hour. Jenny, you talked about the reporting side of things, Andrea, and sitting down with coaches and that not being a possibility right now. How concerned are you about how much control the leagues have over information?
Well, from what I understand about the NBA bubble, the limited media members that are even able to be there, both print and TV, or whatever we're calling it now, video, had to sign a form that said that if they were to encounter someone outside of particular areas, that they wouldn't go near them. Wow. But you're in the NBA's bubble, so you need to sign whatever it is that they need you, that they are requiring of you. And for any of us who have ever been around teams, when you're running into someone in a casual setting and you can just talk with them, that's a great way to mine information. It's a terrific resource. So you're limited there. I can't, I really feel for beat people this season, because you're going to be, for the most part, relegated to Zoom. But the idea of maybe you walk out of a press conference with someone, or you walk down a hall with someone, whatever it is, things like that obviously aren't going to happen at all. And just for sideline reporters, I know you're going to get to this, Noah, but for sideline reporters, in the years that I did it, and as Jenny probably knows better than anyone here, pregame is when you get so much information, not just the updates, but updates on health, whatever it is. Obviously, sideline reporters are not going to be allowed on the field. In the NFL, they're going to be in what is less than affectionately being called the moat, which is the first 3 rows of stadiums before the advertising starts. So you're not going to be able to do your pregame, and halftime interviews are really going to be a work in progress, whether or not they can do what Bob and I know from our Olympic days, where there's a mixed zone type of area, like a neutral area where you're going to be able to meet someone. I know that's the hope and expectation of some of the producers, but there's nothing guaranteed at all. So I'm very concerned that once we get through this, as Jenny pointed out, not only are people losing their jobs, I mean, the gentleman who's the spotter on our Amazon broadcast, who also spots for college football, he worked with Jenny for many years, a different person, but guy who worked with Jenny. But our spotter on Amazon, who also works for Fox, he works for ESPN. He's Doc Emmerich's spotter on hockey. He has no job right now. So I'm very worried about, none of us, we're going to have jobs and we have contracts, but for some other people who may be deemed expendable, I'm very concerned about them. And then absolutely, what limitations will continue to be for those of us that cover sports. I think that teams will very much be able to say, hey, well, it worked for the 2020 season, and newspapers still came out, and ESPN still had content, and Fox Undisputed still had things to debate. So I am very concerned about what the future holds.
And for those of you who don't know, the spotter is the one who's in the booth with the play-by-play announcer and the analyst, oftentimes in between the two or over the shoulder, and who has usually a long pointer or even a laser pointer, and he's pointing to your spotting board, which is your board with all of the players' numbers and names. So to show you who made the catch, who made the tackle, to make us look good. A good spotter usually leads to a good broadcast. So Bob, given that so many things are changing behind the scenes here, how does this impact what the viewer sees?
Well, people just want to see the game. And do you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I thought my audio changed. And so it's really hard to say. I think there's a possibility that actually some of our camera positions could improve. We use these low end zone cameras in the end zone, shooting back for fabulous close-ups and cutaways and hero shots. And often they're not in the ideal position that we want them to be, because they're maybe a little too low, because you don't want to be blocking fans. There are security people who time to time stand in front of the lenses. We may be able to put them in a little different position, raise them up. So in terms of the pictures, I think in some situations they'll actually be better. I think it's going to impact replays. If you have people working at a remote location providing replays, that could be a slower process, and we might not be able to use as many different angles. I don't think it's going to change. Well, let me go back on that. I don't know what the plan is in terms of cutting equipment, but I would believe that on my crew and our other top crew that we're going to be able to keep all of the equipment that we have. I don't think it's a great risk for the camera people out there, because they are so far separated in an empty stadium. Obviously, you don't have the fans, and so they're not in much danger, I don't believe, while they're out there manning their cameras. I don't think the game will look a lot different. And the bottom line is people just want to see football. I mean, I think people would be happy just to see a pan shot of every play. you wouldn't have close-ups and you wouldn't have, you know, great replays, but people are starved for football. And, you know, I just, I'm happiest about the fact that a lot of our technical people will have their jobs back. And I hope it all works out for them. Now, with the startup of hockey in the NBA, a lot of the guys on my crew, and they're all freelancers because there's no such thing as a staff technical person at CBS anymore. Those guys are starting to work again, which is really, really good. And they get to work during the week, and then they come and work with us on the weekends. So as far as the game looking appreciably different, I don't think it will. I think there will be challenges in terms of the audio, lack of fans, replays, and all that stuff. The graphics could be a little slower if they're remoted out to a different location. But if you look at the way they've done golf, I have great faith in our people. They've done a great job, and I don't see why that wouldn't carry over to the NFL. I'm optimistic about the way the games will look.
Jenny, let's stay with the on-field product and go to the sideline where you spend your time during the NFL and college football season. And Andrea alluded to it before, since the role itself and access to participants will be changing drastically, what is your role and what do you need to provide and what can be provided to viewers realistically?
It's a great question, and I've thought a lot about it. And Andrea and I were, emailing a little bit about this before, and just the idea that you don't have the access. And half of why I like being a sideline reporter is and are those moments, right? The one-on-one moments with players. I put in a lot of work, and it's also important to kind of differentiate the college versus NFL in terms of role as a sideline reporter, because in a lot of ways, and Andrea, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've found NFL easier in terms of the access, in terms of injury reports, in terms of players. There's a consistency. You're always given that information. College can vary, based on teams, based on who you're dealing with, coaches, players. I've covered so many Ohio State games. They trust me. I get a lot from Ohio State. I can basically, at least the last couple of years, I've been able to sit down and have lunch with any player whenever I wanted. And just having that access is why I had such good relationships with that team. That probably isn't going to happen this year, and while I spend a lot of time during college football season on the phone with players, I think that'll remain the same, and maybe there's Zoom calls now, but those coach meetings, that's where we get so much of the pace and the feel for the team. And I think all of us, our crew always tries to come in a day early, 2 days early, if we can have one-on-one meetings. And, we won't get that same sense this year. And I think that's something that personally I'm disappointed about, but you can find the stories in a different way. And, Andrea and I talked about this last week too. It all will depend on where I'm able to be on the field as well. I've heard many different reports. How close can I be to certain sidelines? And that's the same with college, where some teams I could basically sit on the bench and they'd be comfortable. They trust me. There are some teams that, you can't even come close to a bench. So I don't think I'm getting anywhere close. Hopefully I can hear more now that there are no fans, because you think of just the noise level and how much I try to decipher from coaches throughout the game. Maybe I'll be able to get a lot more in that sense, but I also think just in terms of health and safety of players, I'm going to be distanced away, and it will be a new challenge, which it excites me in a way. I mean, you always want to be pushed in this world, and listening to Bob talk about just the logistics of a production, it always blows me away. I'm glad I don't have to worry about the big picture, but it will be different, and it's going to be a work in progress, and no one knows at this point. So I hope that the fans, like Bob said, they're going to just want to see football. They want to see us back in action, and hopefully, and I've been optimistic considering how I think the NBA has looked. I think the NHL looks great. I think the camera angles for the NHL are the best hockey I've seen in a while. So maybe that is because there's no fans, but we're going to make it happen, and we're going to make it work, and it will be different.
It's certainly different.
That's a really good point about the camera angles, because with no fans, I'm assuming we're going to be allowed to move wherever we need to move, as opposed to, not being able to. So that's been a plus. Unfortunately for the fans, it's not a plus, but for TV people, it's been kind of a plus, at least for me.
Bob, do you think you're going to have that in the NFL? Will they have that rail shot? I love that shot in the NBA. You know, it's like what we had at the Olympics.
Oh no, we've been using that on the last 4 Final Fours. They build a track and it's great. It moves up the court with the players. Yeah, it's the same equipment that Turner's been using, or the NBA Network that we use on college basketball. Not regular season basketball, because we'd have to destroy the the home team's court, because you need a special track built to accommodate that camera. But yeah, it's terrific. I love it.
I have to say something to Jenny that may just send shivers down her spine here. I was talking to a young broadcaster this morning who is a sideline reporter for the Missouri Valley Football Conference. And she was told that for at least half of her games, she will be sideline reporting from her home.
No.
Yep.
And that's the whole point of a sideline reporter.
But here's what's really weird. Here's what's really weird about that, Jenny, is we already discussed the lack of contact that reporters will have pregame. And if indeed in the NFL, the reporter is in the stands, then how are you going to get to the coach at halftime? The irony is that if she's at home, she can Zoom with the coach. She could literally be walking with her device. He could be walking with his device while she's Zooming with him. So she's still planning to have her access to a coach. But as I said to her, but how are you supposed to be able to see a sideline? I told her, I said, you should ask for a camera. I don't know if this exists or not, Bob. I said, you should ask for a designated sideline camera where if you almost had a joystick and you can be moving the camera so you can watch the sidelines, because just so people out there understand, when, at least for the NFL, when the teams have to give you a designation, and it could be something as general as upper extremity, lower extremity, and they have to give you a designation, probable, questionable, doubtful, or out, in terms of the ability to return to the game. So as a sideline reporter, okay, upper extremity, all right, great. I see they're working on his left shoulder. He, just remember he's a right-handed quarterback, but so we're checking his mobility, or his ankle. He's pushing off of it. Those are the things that you have to be able to relate to the audience, the things that you're seeing. But I don't know how you do that from home. That's a scary prospect, huh?
It's scary. And it's also, that's the whole point of my role, right? I mean, I can have 50 pre-produced in my head stories about players, which might come in hand, and maybe that's a pregame element. But, I've worked with my producer, Chuck McDonald, this will be year 5 on college football. And he always he's like, I don't really care about what we already know. We probably all know that story too. What can you see? What can you tell me? What are you experiencing? I mean, that's my role, right? And we're going to have to get creative in ways that I haven't figured out an answer to yet. So I think it is going to be a work in progress. But Andrea, I do not want to be at home in any capacity.
and I do think they might not know it now, and we're going to get to Q&A in a moment, but the viewers will suffer when announcers can't sit down with the coaches and the coordinators. I've called games where the coach, because of travel situations where you can't sit down with the coaches, and on the phone, the coach says, hey guys, I've got 8 minutes. Oh, what can you can't even ask a coach anything in 8 minutes. And then you sit down.
I totally disagree with you.
Why is that?
Well, first of all, for Thursday night football, because you've got a Thursday game and a Sunday game, and Bob may be familiar with this when CBS had the package, Thursday interviews are always done via phone, right? So for now, in fact, I told my producer, for Amazon, we should just go from phone to Zoom since everybody's used to it. But you're used to that for football, where you're given. I mean, listen, if somebody's got 10, 15 minutes, that's great. That's what we always ask for. But if they tell you got to come in and you got 4 minutes, then you got to get to it as quickly as possible because you have to get something. So I don't know. I think in terms of the preparation, we've always done for Thursday Night Football, we've done our traditional production meetings just like Fox does and CBS does, and I did when I was on Sunday nights with NBC. So whatever amount of time you're given, I don't think that's is relative to COVID. I think that's just relative to how much time coaches and players have. It's my opinion.
But I've also found that I think the NFL and NFL coaches are more used to being able to disseminate information to broadcasters. They've been through this over and over again in 15 minutes versus a coach, say, in the Missouri Valley Conference who doesn't really do this all the time, or maybe other lower levels of college football. And he doesn't want to give away anything, and he's giving one-word answers, and that doesn't do anybody any good.
In the past, it's coaches are all different. You know, there's Andy Reid will sit down with you for an hour. He just loves doing it. Other guys, you got 10 minutes, I got to go. You know, and it also depends on their schedule with meetings at the hotel, whatever. But yeah, a lot of it's going to be on Zoom during the week, conference call during the week. We're not going to meet with them, I suspect, anytime, you know, in a live situation on the day before the game, which we normally do. You know, we do home team morning. When the visiting team arrives, we do them at the hotel. That's probably out. I haven't heard it's definitely out, but I'm guessing it's totally out. So again, it's a coach by coach thing. I mean, you know, some guys just love to sit there and talk and get away from it. And it's just not just, the other thing about these meetings that we have, it's not all about the game. It's not always all about strategy. It's about just hanging out and telling stories. I mean, Evan Washburn, who's a reporter on our crew, he was a big time lacrosse player at Delaware. And if you get Bill Belichick into a room, who's not going to give you much of anything for the game, he will talk for hours with Evan about lacrosse. So it's a coach. They're all different. They really are.
And something that Jenny alluded to, I think is this to me is what's going to be the key for in terms of preparation, whether it's television, whether it's print, whatever. It's all about relationships. If you've got the relationships, you can pick up the phone to call someone or schedule a call with someone. It's just more important than ever, I think, in this COVID age.
All right, so let's get to Q&A. We appreciate all the questions that have come in. Let's start with you on this, Jenny. What advice do you have for someone trying to get into production at an ESPN or an NFL Films?
Sure. Well, I'd say, you know, in terms of my advice right now, I wouldn't really change advice based on the pandemic and what we're dealing with. Something I have said often to a lot of aspiring, you know, sports production people, on air, off air, behind the scenes, doesn't matter. My advice is get in some capacity. You know, it doesn't have to be the perfect job overnight. I worked in marketing when I was at Fox Sports North, but I believed that I was going to be on air. I believed I was good enough, and I volunteered. I spoke with other reporters who I would bring coffee if they'd let me shadow them, and just kind of get my foot in the door, but make relationships along the way, be a hard worker, be a good person, and just get in the door. It might not be the perfect place. And some would say go to a small market and work your way up. But I think right now, given the times, we're not going to have those traditional roles as available. So if you can be around it and learn, I mean, I love sitting in a TV truck. I mean, I look at what Bob does and it blows me away. But what I've learned from sitting in a truck has helped me as a sideline reporter. And that's just my advice. And, you know, don't get discouraged when it's not the perfect thing right off the bat, because I think that while it's so unique how Andrea, Bob, and I all work in different places, it's a small world. We've all worked with many of the same people, and it kind of does go a long way in terms of building up those relationships. So that'd be my advice right now. And, you know, you might have to volunteer along the way, but it's worth it if this is the job you want to have. And, you know, you might not have weekends, but I don't even need them. I just want to cover sports.
Bob, let's go to you on that, specifically on the production and director track.
I tell this to kids all the time in high school or college. Be around, like Jenny said, try to be around a production. Now, this coming season, it's going to be impossible. You can't just walk up to a truck, knock on the door and say, hey, can I watch you guys? But here's what I do tell them. I said, besides being passionate about it and get anything you can get, don't turn your back up at news. I started at CBS News. I worked on space shots, election nights, conventions, special programs, and the Walter Cronkite show, all that, the evening news, all that stuff, morning news. You learn to manage your time because you have to. You learn how to back time. You learn how to time a piece. You learn how to edit. You learn how to transfer. Well, in my day, we had pieces come in on film and you had to transfer them to videotape. You don't have to do that in sports anymore. But you learn to work with graphics. And I think news is a fabulous place for young people to learn their craft. So I would suggest that you try to contact your local news station, see if there's a job there, and it could be anything. I started at WCAU in Philadelphia running teleprompter for John Facenda, a great newsman back in the day. I dropped a box of confetti on Bill Bennett to start the 6 a.m. farm show, and I'd cue out the goats from the back of the lot. So those are the things. You're around it, and it doesn't have to be initially in sports. It can be anywhere else, but news to me is the place you should try to get a job, because you learn so much.
John Facenda, the voice of God.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. That's right.
This is a tough thing for me to talk about, as Bob and Jenny and Noah, we discussed last week. Obviously, I teach at COM, and so I see graduates that are going out there. One of my students this year who was, my students were, first of all, kudos to them, because I taught online and they learned online. It is not for the faint of heart. And I think they were maybe my best class ever. I give them so much credit, but it's really, really tough. One of my top students who just got her master's, graduated, albeit virtually. As of last week, Bob, Jenny, Noah, I said that she had applied for 100 jobs. We are now up to 117.
Yeah.
She has applied for 117 jobs. And I know that she's going to get one. And it may not be, as Bob and Jenny have said, may not be the ideal job. Get in the door in some capacity. A man who is a lot smarter than me has a great expression. He said, the world will find you. And I do believe that. If you're there, once you're in someplace, somebody's going to see that you're smart, you're hardworking, you're determined, you're going to do anything you want to learn, and they will find you. But I cannot tell you how much I feel for people getting into the business. But the most important thing, and I hear that I have this question posed to me all the time, is journalism something that people should be going into now? Oh my God, yes, please, yes. Do not think that just because there are these challenges presented additionally by COVID, we need strong journalists more than ever. So please do not think I'm going to go into a totally different line of work. If this is where your heart and your passion lies, journalism is still going to thrive regardless of a global pandemic.
A quick follow-up on that, Andrea, would be a question that I've gotten a lot, is that I've heard students will say to me, well, I've heard that we need journalists, but is anyone going to be paying for journalists? So given your experience with working with so many students as a COM faculty member, what do you hear from employers?
Well, look, I also, and Bob can relate to this pretty well. When we were starting off in another century, as I like to say, the internet didn't exist. The regional sports networks didn't exist. Sports talk radio didn't exist. There's a good thing about that, but that's a whole nother issue in some corners. There are a multitude of opportunities out there, much more so than when Bob and I were in school breaking into the business. So you have, and the other thing that I tell kids is, you know what? If you're a writer, continue to write. Mm-hmm. Write. Well, look, I'm always going to say that writing is the single most important skill that people need to have, regardless of what they're going into. But you can write, put it out there in some capacity. Just get out there. People we're talking about 2020. People are putting videos out all the time. Just keep getting experience for whatever it is. There are opportunities out there. Yes, I hear you. College loans have to be paid, and I fully understand that. But what's important in addition to that is that you have to keep getting experience. You've got to get your reps in whatever capacity it can be. self-publish, put yourself out there in whatever way it is. And again, hope that somebody's going to see, but at least it's more for your portfolio. I will share with students one thing, and I've heard this a lot. When people are going to be interviewed for jobs, one of the big questions is going to be, what did you do during the pandemic? And if the answer is going to be, hey, you know what? I binge watched a lot of Netflix. It was great. And I read some books, and I'm the master puzzle maker, and that's all fine. But people want to know how enterprising you were. And maybe you figured out a way to shoot your own show or shoot a little bit of a movie or whatever it could be. People are going to be looking to what was accomplished. What did you learn? What did you get out of being quarantined during this pandemic?
I think you're absolutely right. And it's something I say all the time, that you're always going to be asked, so what are you doing now? And you always have to be doing something. It doesn't matter what level it is on, you always have to be doing something. Let's fly through some more Q&A here as we're close to running out of time. Let's start with you, Bob, on this. How do you feel about the popularity of the quote unquote documentaries, and this coming off The Last Dance? Is the age of independent journalism over because of the access, or are we going to be seeing more of this not mockumentary, but produced from only seeing one side of things?
No, I hope documentaries never end. I don't see why they would even during the pandemic. It's funny you mentioned that. My wife and I just watched the Muhammad Ali documentary last night. Obviously, we watched The Last Dance. That's not kind of my field, but my son, one of my boys who's got to finish up at USC, he's so interested in this that he's going to try to get some kind of work in the documentary area. I think it's going to be more difficult to shoot, but I think you can do it without, one-on-one interviews with people, because you can rely on archival footage, as most of the Ali doc was done. Andrea probably has a better answer to this, since she works on Real Sports, which does fabulous stuff. So maybe she should take the lead on this one.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. I do not by any chance think that documentaries are dead. In fact, ESPN's doing more than ever. And look, Last Dance is a whole nother issue. Obviously, I was in it pretty prominently. Watch Netflix Athlete A, and you will know that documentaries are not dead, and they are more important than ever. And it was independently done, and it is absolutely fabulous. It's about the U.S. gymnastics scandal and Larry Nassar, who, thank goodness, is imprisoned for the rest of his life. But I would strongly recommend to anybody interested in filmmaking that you watch Athlete A on Netflix. Listen, it's tough, Noah. The Weight of Gold just aired last week, which is it was terrific on mental illness and depression amongst Olympic athletes. But again, it was executive produced by one of the athletes that's in there. The Last Dance, executive produced by one of the athletes that's in there. I'm not sure that, Ken Burns came out and was very critical of The Last Dance. It is not a documentary in the purest sense. So I don't know if there's another way to express what those are, what we call them. I certainly wouldn't call it a mockumentary, but the classic documentaries, there is plenty of room for them, and they thrive, and they are, I feel, more important than ever. And oh, by the way, just again, for everybody in this age of social justice, for any student that's out there, my homework for you, mandatory viewing 13th by Ava DuVernay. Absolutely incredible. It should be in every high school, every college, but people must watch this documentary. It is absolutely, it is truly life-changing for people. 13th by Ava DuVernay.
Jenny, I'd like your thoughts on this question that came in about the National Women's Soccer League, their Challenge Cup being aired and drawing great viewership during the pandemic, do you think networks now would be trying to capitalize on the success of the previously untapped and underserved sports?
Sure, I'd love to think that. I mean, and I'm the biggest NWSL. I covered the U.S. Women's National Team since 2015, and those women, those athletes, are incredible to watch, to be around, inspiring. I mean, the list could go on. I mean, I would argue that covering Abby Wambach and Alex Morgan and Megan Rapinoe, that has been the most gratifying experience I've had as a reporter, and just being around those teams, been seeing the growth. And I would hope so. I think there's a lot of sports like that we're seeing get that attention. I mean, I'm watching the WNBA. I'm biased because I'm a female athlete. I love those sports. I was watching lacrosse last night on NBC that came on after a hockey game. I mean, I want those sports to get the attention. I think sometimes it can be an uphill battle, but I've covered a lot of unique sports that have different fan bases. I covered motocross for 5 years, and they have that niche. So I'd love to see more exposure. I mean, I'm the biggest fan of women's sports in general, and of course, I mean, like, I actually got to go to the Olympics in 2018 and seeing the U.S. women's hockey team win gold. I've never been just more impacted by that. And you want to see all these leagues have that opportunity to shine. And I hope that will continue, but it's progress.
All right, let's close with a quick piece of advice from all of us, and been really fortunate to hear from such notable folks in the field, Jenny, Bob, Andrea. I'll start with something as simple as keep hustling, that there's never any reason not to be doing something right now, reiterating what I said earlier, that there's always a platform and you can create your own. So always hustle. Jenny?
Well, I keep thinking about Andrea saying nimble, because I feel like that's going to really apply to this next year. But no, my word would just be, it's just one word. Oh, okay. Let's see.
No, it can be more than one.
I think it's just work hard.
Come on, you can do this.
No, I'm just thinking, like, it's all about working hard and being kind. But my word is going to be those relationships, because I think it's the relationships I've built with players and coaches and people I work with that have helped me so far and will continue to help me along the way. And, it all goes hand in hand, but don't be discouraged by things looking a little bit differently right now. We're going to be evolving and figuring it out as we go. So just keep working hard and, keep being a good human.
Bob?
If you get knocked down, just keep getting up. You got to have tremendous passion. You don't have to start, for what you perceive to be your career. You can start someplace else and get a foot in the door to get where you want to go. Like, dropping the box of confetti on that the guy in the kids show. And when this stuff is all over, be around as much as you can be. There's nothing wrong with knocking on a door and saying, can I watch? Can I learn something today? And that's my best advice. It's a tough time, but if you persevere and you have the passion, it's all about passion. Just keep trucking.
I've already given a lot of advice, Noah. So here's my final words. For people who are out there watching, you are beholding 3 tremendous BU alumni, Noah, Jenny, Bob, in different areas who have excelled since their BU days. So my word that I want to think about, especially keeping my students in mind, is that of pride. I have great pride and faith and hope that the students, certainly that I've come across, I know that they are one of these days, hopefully sooner rather than later, going to do great things with all that they have learned at BU. And something that I've told the students as we were embarking on our final projects, which were not ideal circumstances, I said, the skills that you are learning now in this pandemic, how to edit on Premiere, how to shoot yourself, all these different things, these skills are only going to help you as you move forward. And I think Bob used the word when this is over. I'm not sure it's ever going to be over. I think we're going to be dealing with a whole new reality than any of us are used to. But I have faith, and I have a lot of trust that the students, certainly the kids that I'm coming across at BU in the grad school, are going to go on and they are going to be successful. I just know it.
And I know I can speak for Jenny, Andrea, and Bob that we're all here as part of BU alumni, that we have such great pride in where we went to school, where we're working, and we're here to help all the students who've asked for advice and parents who are trying to give advice to their kids. We're here. Ask us, reach out. You can find us on social media, the BU alumni. They have all of our contact information, so please never hesitate to ask. Jenny, Bob, Andrea, Dean, thank you all. And everybody else, thanks for joining us. Continue to stay safe and healthy.
Thanks, Noah.
Good job, Noah.
I'll stay